Music. Hey, everybody out there. I know, I'm getting messages everywhere. Hey, where are you? It's 9:39. You're supposed to be on at 9:30. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Welcome into March. America in crisis, Ukraine in crisis, and more. With me tonight is Joel, a special guest who's come in to discuss some things with me and narratives. I was going to go another way to see, but I was going to talk some Trump to you in the part of this, but in the green room. I got so fascinated with our guest's story, who he is, and the empowerment that he chooses to help people with, his voice, how he's educated, and his beliefs, his outreach sources. Anyway, his name's Joel, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to everybody right now, to you out there. Joel, want to tell everybody who you are, what you do for a living. If you choose to, it's fine. If you don't, it's fine also. And just a little background history.
Yeah, my name is Joel Tuttle. I'm the pastor of the Church of God in a town called Sydney, Montana, not to be confused with the Australian version.
Mm.
But yeah, I've been getting more into the political spectrum since maybe 2018, 19. But as a minister, I've always been interested in people and what their stories are. And through my connections in the church, I was able to develop contacts with people overseas. Some of them I've met in person. And just over the years, I've worked to try to help them, whether it's individuals that were going through the Yemen conflict or conflicts in Ukraine. I've been to Russia. And so, yeah, I have a little bit of personal knowledge of the circumstances of the people on the ground in these environments. And so I just kind of wanted to share my insights as well as look at the macro scale of what's going on politically in this whole world. So
Wow,
here I am.
great. And I want to thank you for coming in. I appreciate it so much. We find ourselves in these dark times, and to sit across from another minister, pastor, it's enlightening for me because sometimes I lose as I told you in the green room, I lose my focus. I get the potty mouth thing going on. You know what? I mean, I'm not a bad person at heart, though. I mean, I'm for people. I really am. I represent myself with sometimes music, and if somebody's down on their luck and I'll send them a song, something that reflects to it, and I'll throw some words into it and give them a reminder because that's the type of place we're in. I don't know what I could send to the Ukrainian people except love and prayers because the bottom line is this. And I even made a post. I did, Joel. I made a post and it said, I hope that uh, Mr. Putin remembers this isn't between really the citizens of countries. This is a problem between governments and countries and different beliefs and ideologies and a narrative that now has occurred. Do you think in your mind that this is a place of empower? I mean, Putin is somebody that was KGB. His family had names and ties way back, and now he's taking narratives. Do you think it's just about the land, the property, the old Soviet Union?
Um, Whether it's the old Soviet Union or even the old empire, the Russian mentality in general is historically, throughout their existence, it's been an authoritarian system. They have always believed in basically the average person is average, and then whoever gets to be in charge must have earned it, and so they kind of let it happen. And that's led to some travesties, obviously with the USSR. But I think Putin, in his mind, sees himself as a father to the Russian people. And just looking at what's going on, NATO was built to combat the USSR. And when the USSR collapsed, NATO waited about 5 years and took advantage of the opportunity to start expanding rather than disbanding. And so you can imagine, like I heard one commentator say, it's like you get whooped hard in a boxing match, and the guy moves in next door afterwards. And now with Ukraine, to add my own spin on that, it's almost like he's looking at your little sister like he wants to start dating her or something, and and it's not a comfortable situation. So of course, on the macro scale, Putin's going to want to say, no, I don't want NATO moving in right next door to me, because their mission has always been to go against Russia.
Right.
And from the Ukrainian perspective, it's kind of like, you could see where they would want sovereignty as a nation. The nation has the right to sovereignty and to make their own decisions. But at the same time, it's very rare in Ukraine, or Russia for that matter, for the people to actually have a voice in government and what their government does. Zelensky, the president, of Ukraine, he got in, and the first thing he did was arrest the opposition candidate, the guy that came in second, and most of his, who was the former president, got him arrested, and then arrested most of the leaders in the opposition party, because he wanted to silence their voice. He didn't want people that believed along those lines to have any representation. And there may have been some legitimacy to the charges they brought, but the end of it is that he's pushing his narrative, and only his narrative, just like Gaddafi or Saddam would have.
Right.
So,
well, that makes a lot of sense, and it actually adds up in ways. If you were to look on some of the other social media platforms, there are people in Ukraine saying, we're not the country that most people are feeling sorry for. Our government has been corrupt,
right,
and in partnerships with forms of identities who were actually running the country, not the president running the country. Mm-hmm. But then there's other narratives out there being fed that Zelensky's in combat uniform and he's going to go out and take down the world. Or actor with no real military experience but again, that's the narrative thing. Have you heard anything through your information? I heard the subways were full. I heard 5 million people pretty much. And I think the leniency to allow the people to leave was given. I was hearing like 5 million people, and I was hearing that, the subways were flooded. Those two narratives of impact, what can you relate on that information wise?
I know one of the people I've been talking to, like his company relocated him to the further western part of Ukraine. And he said housing is tremendous. There's like prices as far as people are gouging. It's really difficult to find a place to live in the safer cities. And also he said a lot of people are trying to leave Ukraine, but they've put laws in emergency actions in place where anyone between 18 and 60, as far as men go, are not allowed to leave. So if you do leave, then you'll probably never be able to see your homeland again. Unless Russia wins. I mean, like, that's the contingency. If Russia wins, they might let them back in.
Right. Yeah. So the villain may be the man with wings. We don't know. We don't know. So to keep all the hypothetical thoughts and narratives on the down low, we know that there's an issue there for sure. And by the way, I brought up to you in the green room that there's a GoFundMe account out there that Aston Kutcher and his wife, Mila, had started on GoFundMe. They wanted to match the first 3 million, and that went off without a hitch. They were able to do that. And it's actually, the last time I looked, at $9,386,000 already raised to help families of the Ukrainian people. So that's a great shout out for that part. And because no matter how you look at this, it's not the citizens, and any rewards or help that can be given. I don't know how they're going to narrate around all that
Right.
with such disruption. I just don't know how it will get to the proper places or proper channels. I mean, in the United States, look at the hands that started the GoFundMe control on the up in Canada with the convoy and the GoFundMe account there. And again, I don't even know if there's any clarity or end in sight on that scenario
Right.
with executive powers of executive orders and so forth through Trudeau, where that money is. So we can only hope as this money sits that it's going to get into somebody's hand that's going to make a difference. We also know that Biden's claiming he's going to support in billions of dollars to Ukraine. But in a way, you have what we call the crime family there in bed with the organization of the government, and a lot of shady deals that have a lot of truth behind them and laptops. I wonder if this is if they're just egging on Putin. Oh, go ahead, destroy everything, because it seems like he was hitting things with pinpoint accuracy that seemed to reflect a lot of things. And then we've seen people sharing little video clips of some of the oh, I forget what they call the buildings off the top of my head, but they were burning all the like the paperworks and stuff, government documents and more, anything that was could be paper related information to be burnt.
Which is great.
It's just mind blowing. It's mind blowing. Do you think there's any way to get these people, though, going back to the very first part of where I should have left off at and not kept rambling? But do you think there's any part to where the people will actually benefit from what good people want to do for the citizens, keeping the government problems out of this scenario?
To a degree, yes. Like with this Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher thing, I think in particular, she has a vested interest in actually seeing real people benefit from that money because she is from there. She is a Ukrainian national. However, as you pointed out, I think a lot of these companies and charities, and I work as an online English tutor for a company that the other day I saw they have a banner up now that says, "We stand with Ukraine, donate here," and you can choose to donate like to the Red Cross or to the Ukrainian military specifically or various other things. And I have no idea if that money is going to go where it says it will. But when I look historically at money that's been raised, the Clinton Foundation raised a bunch of money for Haiti and ended up paying for Chelsea Clinton's wedding. You look at Yemen, that made news for about 2 weeks before people forgot about them. And,
I know.
It's like, but even during that time when it was briefly a famous thing that Yemen was falling apart, there was all kinds of funding raised for them that never made it to anyone other than maybe some government officials and even some to the rebels.
Right.
And so the problem is that when you donate money to a country during these times of crisis, it has to go through not only the red tape on our end, but then it has to filter down through the red tape on their end. And there's a lot of sticky fingers in Ukraine in particular.
That's my worry.
Yeah.
That's my worry.
I think that with the bigger companies, GoFundMe or any of the charity groups, they're going to have to pay to play in Ukraine. Like, just to even operate, they're going to have to pay out a big portion of what they get. With the private individuals like Mila Kunis that have some fame and notoriety and the ability to direct those funds exactly where they want, it might be feasible that they could get it into the hands of families and people that actually need it. So that's my hope. I sincerely hope not to see her in some $9 million wedding dress for her whatever anniversary is coming up.
Yeah. I think when you look at justice on the side of who they are and what they think about, I mean, wasn't Aston one of the first people to testify Pizzagate?
I think
He
he may
he
have
went
been.
and fought it.
Yeah.
So I really think that they're in the right place. The mentality's there, the backbone for the purpose of. I mean, first off, they were willing to match $3 million. I would say that's a pretty hefty donation. Okay, I really believe that. But the sad part to me is, on the other hand, the other skill is the outsourcing to always to other countries. I'm not saying in this dire need, time of dire needs, and
Mhm.
this event that's going on, it's because it's a very dark, painful event with a lot of issues. They need help. But while we still have homeless and our vets homeless and sick and more on the streets, we always focus to help another country. And I understand there's somebody from that involved here. And hats off to her. And she's also an incredible actress. I mean, she's made
Mhm.
a big a she's just phenomenal. She really is. And Ashton, same typical kind of guy. When you look at him from the '70s show and the things that they
Yeah.
did there, I mean, he made me laugh many times over, and I could call him an idiot to his face because that's the way I learned. That was who he was, but it was acceptable because it was a fun type of thing, and it was only a character. And I did movie work around people, and I would say if I got to work around him, that would have probably been a better time for me. I worked around people that were a little bit more, uh, they were stiff to some degree, but not all. But there were some that were just like not like they forgot the values of where they come from. So I praise them for what they're doing here and what the cause is for the money, and I hope it gets out there. But again, it just saddens me that we have to wait for something like this to occur when we've been for the last 25 years trying to find affordable housing for vets and stuff and better health care and management and hospitalizations and so forth because of what they suffered. I don't know why I brought that up, but it just, to me, there's a characteristic. We are talking war, we are talking military. That thought just came out in my head that we're not doing enough even in our own country, and we don't have a government that even looks at us right. Part of a narrative that I gave you earlier was Paskey came on, so you might care to make comments to this, was how she dogged everything that Putin was doing about how he was controlling reporters and Facebook and more. And I think he was genuinely, my thought is he's trying to control the narrative from being too stupid because look what we're going through here. And this lady gets up in front of the country and lies through her teeth on many topics that we have been, trying to get to the bottom of. Their narrative is always to, make the right a wrong and make the wrong a right, and that's how the characteristics of how they monopolize their procedures and what I call the mind vaccination. Don't let the media vaccinate you. Don't let the White House vaccinate you. It's all a mind element. It's trickery, and people don't realize it because that's where we are. So, do you have any thoughts on our government and their agenda in this, and as far as where they may go, and have you any of your outsourced uh, contacts been able to share anything with you about it?
Um, yeah. All right. So, in terms of the control of the media, that's kind of historically been a Russian thing forever. Um, but the way they're using it right now, I think you might be onto something. I feel like they're trying to uh, filter in a way that maybe actually gives people more accurate information for once. Um, because when we look at Facebook, when we look at YouTube, when I search for things on Google anymore, I can't find what I'm looking for half the time. I have to go over to, uh, DuckDuckGo or Yandex to be able to even come up with a search that relates to what I'm trying to find, because Google's so corporately intertwined with
Yes.
with the media world and the narrative they're trying to push. And actually, you might have to get me back on topic with the question at hand in a minute, but um,
That's
the
all right. That's all right. I know I kind of like threw a three-way at you,
yeah,
but they all
we
kind of
did.
collide. But if we don't get to it, we don't get to it. It's fine. I can't remember everything I even bring up myself, so never feel bad about that. All right. So
So
any contacts confirming any of these doings over there? Who's really in control?
so in Russia, my friend over there was telling me that, strange enough, a lot of people are trying to leave Russia, uh, which you don't hear on any of the mainstream news. Um, but it's kind of interesting that there's a lot of people that are trying to get out of Russia right now, because A, they want to hear a more complete narrative, and B, the people are scared by this conflict in Ukraine. They're like, is this going to bring retribution from the West? Is this going to uh, create some sort of a mass war that I don't want to be here for if we start getting a draft or something? Um, so there's that side of it. Uh, they did say that there is a big push in the Russian media saying if you start agitating, creating protests in the street and things like that that are going to interrupt uh, daily business, then we will arrest you.
Right.
Because that's just their style of government. They don't have the right to freely assemble like we do. Um, I love that right that we have. I think that it's a great thing that we have it, and I am glad to be born in America for that reason. But at the same time, I feel like when we do freely assemble here, it doesn't affect very much anymore. Um, you get all these protests in DC, even J6, it made headlines that people got into the Congress building, but it didn't change the way they were doing business. So anyway, yeah, I feel like on the ground there are things that aren't being reported. There are definite concerns among the population within Russia for what's going on. But mostly the people are concerned about their cousins, their brothers, their sisters that live in Ukraine. They're not so much worried about is the government lying to me as the government's telling me the truth that we're in this conflict now, and uh, and now I've got family that I've got to worry about.
Right.
And so bringing it back to that micro scale of Russians fundamentally tend to see Ukraine like their little sister or their distant cousin. Ukrainians, on the other hand, from the ones that I've talked to, uh, maybe are a bit more racist against Russians. They and not without reason, uh, but they tend to lump the Russian people in with the Russian government, whereas the Russian people tend to view the government and the people separately. Um,
Can I interrupt just for a quick second?
sorry.
It's just I think you're point on, but I think part of what once was um, in Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
became a freedom because the more you give or lead a country in some ways
Right.
forward, you find a different type of freedom, and you may find your country to be a little bit more tolerable in government. But on the backside of it, the corruption is there practicing what they want to practice, and the agenda exists for what stands within the corruption of that government. No government on either side is any good in this element when you look at things on a large scale. But do you think that Putin is really doing this? I mean, we were at this before a little earlier. My thought is that, you know, he does not want to participate any longer or tolerate any longer actions from the world of Davos, NATO, the United Nations, etc., and the
Sure.
corruption that's going on in the government. And could possibly even Zelensky, maybe he had private conversations with Putin and said, I'm stuck here. I'm in this position. I can't do nothing. I don't like it. I'm not for it. You got to rescue us at any cost. I mean, we don't know. Have you heard anything that way?
That way, no. But again, from talking to just the recent conversation I had with a Ukrainian, and then also just from my personal observations, uh, everyone has something to gain here. Zelensky's poll numbers, the mayor of Ukraine's poll numbers, they're at 85, 95% of people are backing them as they're watching these photographs come out of these guys holding machine guns, or which half the time turn out to be airsoft guns.
Right.
But, they're like the Miss Ukraine one.
So you're saying, in other words, a war led by narratives and false information.
False information narratives. Putin's getting his on the backside of it because, we're putting sanctions on Russia, right? So called. They can't borrow money from our banks, but at the same time, we're not opening up our own oil fields. Germany's not opening up their oil and coal fields, even though they're extensive. So Russia's still getting billions of dollars handed to them. They're being allowed to raise the price of oil to whatever price they want, and we're paying it.
I think it's 113 a barrel as of 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your fuel costs are, just to relate to the American people. They like when I throw these little narratives in. The average gas price is $4.19 a gallon and near $5 on diesel. So yeah, 113. How you liking those stimulus checks now? I mean,
right.
The economy's falling apart, and I apologize for that interruption to you, but you're right. They have a source. Do you think? Let me just bring you into America for a second. We can resolve this. But the only resolvement that we've seen happen was the fact that all those pennies on the dollar that Trump was able to, go after all that oil that he did when he was still in office. He took advantage of, the fall that occurred, and he stocked us up. Now we're going into like 45 million barrels. I can't even see the price come down. I mean, when you look at what the job markets are, Target's hiring people today $24 an hour. $24 an hour. So if you need a job, you might want to consider going there. That's the truth. I mean,
and again, to get paid less than that 10 years ago,
Right. And this narrative, will we ever catch up? And with this economy, by what's going on, and now the truckers, we in America, I think we have 2.7 million. 2,700,000 trucks on the roads that work pretty much daily by daily. And now you have a convoy that's growing, and they are expecting, upon informations, it was 70 miles long as of this afternoon around 3:30, 4 o'clock. That's what people, are reporting. But they also said by the time it gets to DC, it will be three times that. Now, I don't know if that will be true, if that will stand, but there's automobiles, trucks, everything in it. And by the time they get there, everything they're fighting for, we're losing. They're giving the battle up on COVID. Take your mask off. COVID's under control. It's 90% now. We got this. And so everybody's going there for mandates, and they're starting to say, hey, before you get here, we're gonna get rid of COVID. It's gonna kind of like disappear. So everything you did was for nothing.
Pretty much. And you look at it, this war, this conflict gives everyone something that they want. Like I said, the Ukrainian politicians, they're getting a field day of PR. Russia is getting a massive influx of funds for just on the resources that all the politicians are criticizing them for, which, I think Putin owns like 30% of Gazprom and several other Russian companies. So he's becoming more and more the richest person in the world just because of
Right.
how tied in he is. Uh, Lockheed Martin and several other weapons manufacturers and uh, aviation manufacturers have major stockholders that also own big shares of the media. So when you report on this war and people send money to Ukraine to buy weapons, they're double dipping, uh,
Yeah.
you know, and so everyone's getting something out of this, and of course DC is getting a major distraction. Um, as long as the media is pushing out this Ukraine conflict narrative, no one's focusing on the truckers. No one's remembering COVID even at this point. Um, and so I feel like this is the distraction they've been needing to get people subdued again, to
Right.
where we forget about the offenses against our personal liberties that they've been uh, conducting and implementing against us over the last two or 3 years. Um, so yeah, I feel like this is a big control thing. The American government gets something, Putin gets something, the Ukrainian government gets something, NATO gets what they want,
And
and
then
then
China steps in.
China steps in, and they're off the radar right now for everyone else, so they can do whatever they want in Taiwan. So
Right. It's a
that's
big narrative flip flop. To me, though, I still go back to the thought. I've been labeled recently. They always used to say, "Hey, Michael Anthony, he's that conspiracy theorist guy." Okay, I like theorists. But now I'm being labeled as a terrorist. I mean, we've seen it happen on many other with many other narratives, but that's been coming to me now. Yeah, you're the conspiracy terrorist. So I like that analogy if they want to place that with me, because history has a lot of information in it, and how things work. And you named a couple really big components like Lockheed Martin and Boehm and those guys. And you're right; they're all double dipping, they're double infiltrating, but they're all owned by one conglomerate, which is actually made up of three: Vanguard, BlackRock, who own every multiple of everything that is any resource of anything in the world. And they're, so, in other words, they are controlling. And one of the things that I fear most is now that I'm seeing on the back of labels, and I might blow your mind here, but you might not be a fan of chocolate after knowing that now it's all bioengineered, and it's already on the back of the packages. So I have a fear to that. So I make phone calls, and I bought your product. It tastes different. I'm not really happy with it, but what is this bioengineering? Well, we don't know. No one ever told us. We know it's on the package. I said, well, how can I get my money back? Well, if you open the package, we don't, it's up to your local store. They can suffer the loss, but we won't accept it as a returned item, because it was in small print that you can barely read. It was
right.
come on. So it's in crackers, it's plant-based foods, and now we're being attacked on those levels. And when you control sources of essentials in the world, it puts us right back in this position. Like you said, change the narrative, keep them blind to the effect, which is actually the reset. The
Right.
reset is in place. Everything that they've done has been part of the reset. Everybody thinks it's just that one global banking mechanism. Quantum banking will take the effect and everything's gonna. No, it doesn't work that way. It's already taken the effect. It's how they work and manipulate numbers that don't even exist by approving a loan, by saying, yeah, all right, we agree to give you 3-4 trillion dollars, and all they do is type it in. It's not backed by anything. It's not even guaranteed by anybody.
And that is an interesting point, actually. So American money is fiat,
Yeah,
100%. And so that means it's backed by nothing. Russian money is about 26% gold backed. So that means that the ruble, I mean, I think they just said it lost like 30% of its value against the dollar.
yeah,
Uh, but that's only about that's like half of the value that it can lose. It can only go down so far before it actually hits an equilibrium. Um, and so, because of that, ultimately, if there was a long, drawn out economic issue again, like we're starting to see right now with massive inflation in every economy around the world, again, like you said, thank you, stimulus checks. Um,
Yeah.
Russia's going to come out on top. Russia and China actually both have some measure of gold in their fiscal backing. I think Russia's got more. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting future, and they may end up being the ones that decide the future of the economy if governments can't come up with a really rapid reset on our banking systems. Um, so I think it's kind of humorous that we're cutting them off from the Western banking system when they're the ones that have, at least on paper, one of the more stable potential currencies in the world.
Which focuses a very good narrative point. Our money's basically worthless. People don't want to believe that, but it's a fact. So if we're even 50 cents on the dollar, which I don't think we're anywhere near that, I really don't. I think we're well below that.
Mhm.
You're only seeing 113 a barrel U.S. dollars. Russia's probably seeing it as like $40 a barrel
Yeah, I
because
mean,
our money's worthless.
right,
And he wants it to look like that. So we see and awake to the point of what this global environment has done to our United States government. And the saddest part of this is when I look at things like this on this beautiful symbol, okay,
right,
and that's what it is to me. It's a beautiful symbol. I have them everywhere. I live them, love them, and I'll die with them for many reasons. But the point is, every day I look at it, I feel like another star falls off, and it loses another stripe. And it
mhm,
doesn't have to, because the information can teach us all a lot if we learn to synchronize ourselves to look into it and what we're seeing. Many have. I hope for events like this. I don't want events like this, but I hope for events like this when they take place. And it seems it must be necessary because they exist for whatever excuse me reasons. Uh, I don't know. It's just mind blowing to me. That we have to show so much failure. Um, that our government has to represent so much failure in this place and time. When you look at the State of the Union the other night, it was an embarrassment. He spoke nothing about a future. The purposeful event of addressing the nation is to build confidence and strength. And it was all about war, Ukraine, and different types of abilities and more, and nothing about the future of what will work within their new Build Back Better failure or the new Green Deal.
right.
And that's why I say everything that I'm seeing is just the collapse of a beautiful country every day, more and more under this regime, and it's very toxic. Do you see it any different?
Um, honestly, I understand fully where you're coming from, and uh, when I was a kid, I remember growing up in my house, like it was common for my parents to vote Republican because they weren't going to vote Democrat. and uh, but my mom always told me, really, I'm more of a libertarian. Like I feel like even the Republicans are at some level for big government, for big military, rather than for the people's rights to defend themselves and create their own, basically their own lives. Um, and I feel like as I'm getting older, I see more and more of what she meant, because Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter who's in office. The government somehow manages to get stronger and the people get weaker.
Right.
Uh, like even under Trump, the ATF got more power, and the people lost some of their Second Amendment rights. And I liked a lot of what Trump did economically. Uh, yeah, I got a lot better paying jobs when he was in office and enjoyed the tax breaks. But uh, on the flip side, there was some sacrifices with that. In terms of the flag itself, do you know what the rebellious stripes were? That was the flag of the Sons of Liberty. It had 9 vertical bands.
I remember something about it, but please enlighten me because I don't know everything.
Okay, so in 1865, 9 people gathered in a small shop in was it Boston, and declared themselves the Sons of Liberty. Basically, there was like 2 print owners. Samuel Adams was there, and a few other guys. And so they created this flag, and it was 9 vertical bands, and of red and white, and so that's where the red and white stripes came from in our flag. But historically, in flags, horizontal stripes like we have now and like Russia has were seen as a symbol of authoritarian government. And vertical stripes were seen as a symbol of Republican or Democratic government, which is why France made their flag the 3 vertical stripes initially. And so that's why they established the flag in that manner. And then the Federalists came along and had their say in redesigning the American flag, which is still a beautiful flag. Just everything that it stood for over the centuries is, and the people it stood for is amazing. But I think it's almost prophetic that they realigned the stripes to that horizontal, and now we're seeing, in the days when no one knows anything about flags anymore.
That has something to do with this, correct? The symbols?
Yeah.
Like when you see the Masonic symbol or somebody, they do that, or, the monocle. So you have all these different symbols and Masonic,
and
orders.
That bar, like you were talking about, that's an authority symbol, basically.
So that's the authority. And they used to stand in front of Trump while he would speak, and Fauci would be the first one to pull that stuff. He would always put it right into the lapel of the suit coat, like, or not the lapel, whatever you want to call it there. I'm not a, I don't sew. I'm not sure. It's a suit. It's a suit jacket, or sports jacket. But yeah, they would always make sure that they were directing something back to somebody, like, I got this.
Right.
I got him. I got this. It's not a big deal. And like you said a little earlier, that Trump made things great for you, but there was an offset to other things that were not as good, that we all watched and faced in reality, in real time. He was successful in one way, but they battled him down the other way, and they made sure they kept the control on him. He couldn't get the things done, but that doesn't mean he was a bad man. He did the best he could under the conditions of the swamp. When you go to white, you think you're going to be in this beautiful representation of everything that the United States stands for. If you really want to call it the United States, or District of Columbia, whatever. Some people narrate around the objective of how much space that circumference really is up there. Of their own three, I think they have 1 star or 3 stars with 3 lines, vertical lines, also white, red, white, red, white, red, something like that.
Like that.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of different analogies of different things, but that was enlightening. I really forgot, and I think I just recently learned a little bit about that event that took place, but it didn't. I couldn't register it until you explained it, and then something in the back of my old mind was saying, "Hey, wait a minute, you kind of know this," and it was like, getting like these light flashes, but I didn't remember. I ain't gonna, I didn't really remember. All right, let's move on to something a little different. But still the same. Has anybody said that they see any light at the end of the tunnel here yet? I mean, citizen-wise, are they seeing anything or dealing with anything as they leave the country? Is anything coming back to you saying that they were actually free in movement as long as they left? Were they safe that way in travels?
Yeah, as far as like I said, the people that have moved further west in Ukraine, they still have freedom of movement. It's only in the major battle districts like Kiev and uh, Krak. Sorry, I know the names of these places, but yeah, further east, um, where the conflict is heaviest, that people are being forced to shelter in place or go to shelters, and only come out at certain times unless they volunteer for the military, in which case they can pretty much do whatever they want. Um, which actually, we saw reports of them allowing prisoners to volunteer for military service, and then those people were coming out doing whatever they wanted, which for criminals tends to be criminal acts against the civilian population. So it kind of seemed reminiscent of certain time not too long ago in our country when we
Right.
had prisoners getting let out during the riots, which made no sense.
Free, let freedom reign when it
Yeah.
pertains to a narrative. All right, so Trump said something the other morning on a show, and I'm not trying to come down on Donald. I'm not trying to mess with Mr. President. I always say, hey, give me 10 minutes, Mr. President Trump. Just give me 10 minutes because I get probably spat off 20 questions and he would probably want to jab slap me in the face about it. But my thing, we're in a place now. You must ask everything, question everything, question everyone. That's where
Yeah.
we're at. He claims that there are thousands upon thousands of deaths that have already occurred. Are you getting anything back that reflects that, or was he referring in that narrative that this was combat? Foot soldiers, combat to combat, confrontation deaths, or was he really referring to the fact that the possibility maybe a couple, uh, you know, uh, bad shots took out something? I mean, there was he's usually the truth social. Um, so when you do hear him make a comment like that, we try to always take in the fact that finally somebody's speaking the truth, but again, people over there. Are they saying that it's within the citizens of the communities through the all the countries over there that are dying, or is this just pertaining to soldiers?
Right. Well, first off, Michael, I would say that I trust Donald's numbers a whole lot more than Biden's ability to count. Um, but as far as what I'm hearing from my people over there, yes, there have been civilian targets that have been hit, as well as military strategic targets. In one case, I think a hospital was hit by a missile, and that killed dozens of people. Um, and I think the number of 2,000, considering the size of Slavic cities, right? They don't have what we have in America. Uh, Here in America, we have small towns and fairly mid-sized cities, and then we've got people living on farms out in the country. They don't do that. They've got like open terrain, and then everyone kind of crowds into the cities, and some of them have country homes uh, and big farms type thing. So, so a lot of the land in Ukraine as well as in Russia is just wilderness with big cities popped up in between. So to hear a figure like 2,000 when so many of their cities have populations of millions isn't surprising. I mean that could be done with just a couple, maybe a dozen rockets hitting the right location.
Right. Or going after the right person.
Yeah,
It makes me wonder that they have no choice in this movement in order to make it successful to keep going. And casualties of war is never good on any level. One's too many, just like President Trump used to say when it came to the fact of the vaccination. And here we are now, all these months later, and the numbers are huge. And then you have the adverse effects and life expectancies not to be anywhere near as long in some cases of different levels of the medical informations that are now being more talked about.
Right.
scrutinized, of course, by the media on all levels, but at least coming out and gaining strength slowly.
Right.
So I
Well,
just wonder, because there were strategic locations hit, it seemed, to to create pain and disruption that had to do with the other world's involvement. They're facilitating of this United Nation global effort of one world government, and to me, again, if I'm repeating myself, I really feel that Putin's like putting the stiff arm up, saying nope, nope,
no. Now
nope.
the flip side of that is there have been reports of anywhere as many as 3,500 to 4,000 Russian soldiers being critically injured or killed. Uh, when which any military confrontation, I think they statistically expect if you're doing an invasion, you need a 3-to-1 advantage because 2-to-1 isn't enough. So that makes sense that they would be suffering heavy casualties as well. Um, but yeah, as far as hitting strategic targets, like I said, the cities are so densely populated in the Slavic world because of the way the Soviets did things. You know, they built houses that had like teeny little apartments with 2 families in them because that's communism. Um, and now under capitalism, those same apartments exist. They just are occupied by 1 family now. But because of the way that it's built over there, if they were after 1 person, it would be really easy to hit a dozen or 100, and just oh well type mentality. And one
Right.
thing I gotta say, is like you said, it's horrible when people pay the price for the wars that politicians and the wealthy get into. Uh, one casualty is too many. But one thing I respect about Putin in particular, which I'm not saying I like the guy, but I do respect this one thing about him, is he's not papering over things. When we went to war in Iraq, in Libya, uh, in Iran, when we set up Gaddafi, when we set up dictator after dictator, that we have interfered in elections to put in place, that we have gone to war both for and against in order to destabilize or whatever we wanted to do. Um, we always tried to paper over it with a hero narrative, like, oh, there's
Right.
weapons of mass destruction, or oh, this person's going to do great and amazing things to help everyone, uh, and then they turn out to be a crazy a-hole, and we're like, oh well, we'll give him 20 years and then we'll take him out. um, whenever we go in and do something in a foreign country, we try to make it look like we're the good guys and they're the bad guys,
Always,
always. And
always.
and oftentimes that's not the case. There's a lot of gray area. It's not
Right.
white and black. So
Right. Right. And we can look at examples of how that has always taken place. And we always put our nose where it doesn't truly belong. But
right,
again, this agenda started a long time ago. This diversity of get everybody together, all countries involved, and we all collaborate on it. And you must call for permission. Well, Reagan wasn't one that asked for permission. You
right.
threatened Reagan in any way? They found out the next day, you know, he
Yep.
sent bombs right into their living rooms, man, and he took them all out. Now,
And I
you
feel
have
like
to make
that's what Putin's doing, is
right,
I don't know every detail of what may have been talked about behind closed doors between him and Zelensky or Putin or Macron or any of them, but I do feel like he doesn't paper over things. He moved his troops up there, and the world basically told him, we're not capitulating with not only your requests, but with the requests of the Ukrainian people in East Ukraine that had specifically asked for more autonomy. And so the first thing he does recognizes their right to be autonomous, just like France did for America for the colonies back in the 1760s. France didn't care about American freedom. France cared about sticking it to England. Russia doesn't care about, the autonomy of the eastern Ukrainian states. They care about sticking it to NATO. But at the end of the day, he's not trying to make it look like he's better than he is. He's just saying, this is what I'm going to do, and then he does it. And you got to respect someone that's willing to do that.
And he was very clear to Biden, too. I don't know if, not to interrupt you, I don't know if you heard some of this, but the comments that Putin sent back to Biden was, when you become something, then you come talk to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, pretty hard said. There was other narratives there. None of them any better than that one, though. So I don't think, me bringing up any other ones even would, take precedent over the other. They were all equally damaging. And he basically called Joe Obama. He knows who's running this country, and it's Joe Obama. And we know that that's a fact. That there's a different leverage for him here going on. Joe couldn't even analyze what the monitor was saying at the end. He even had a comment, and they were just, and some are saying that was just meant for Nancy to be able to view it and get him off stage, because the narration of where he was going with things, and he came out strong, but he fell rather quickly. Again, that was par for the course for what we're dealing with. That's why his strong arm method of, Peppermint Patty or Paskey, whatever people still call her, the orange, I'll circle back person thing. That's without that. I mean, let's face it, the vice president has been nowhere. And then you have the other symbol on stage. It's a Masonic symbol.
Mm-hmm.
It stands for war, that we will fight against them. And Joe's provoking this. And to me, I got to wonder if it's the crime family's protection. Destroy all the evidence. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Destroy all the evidence. And it makes me wonder, again, we're going somewhere else. We're not really in Ukraine or Russia right now. But who the hell has that laptop? And whatever happened to Pelosi's? It's been missing since day one, J6. Somebody is holding that. It's in somebody's hand. Hers is still gone. That's unquestioned. There's no doubt of question there. And somebody, and we know all the information was dropped. I mean, there's a few attorneys that Trump was rather close to. You can't really say their names on the air, but we know who they were. We know who was dumping the information. It all tied to this country and more. It also tied to Russia in small fragments. Larger in China, major in Ukraine, and then even went back where there was information upon Benghazi, slightly mentioned, children, pedophilia, human trafficking, and just tons and tons of everything that seems like exists there. And I think that's why people are looking at Putin as saying, and even that I hope he's doing this for all the right reasons. And if he becomes a global power because of it, the more power to him, because he stood up when no one else would. Right. And maybe it will help our narrative somehow. Maybe we'll have a different day, a different time, a new person or another person that people want back into the offices as we go into 2022, 2024. And maybe that we'll just have, we'll be able to hold that line and have an insight to the future that may have some positivity, because I don't know how this can all turn around overnight. I mean, a new guy could walk in anywhere and say, all right, now I'm the new leader of the country. Well, guess what? Unless you get rid of every bad apple on both sides, we're going to be back where we were. Because I told this afternoon on another show I did, and I did this from work. I'm working, but I had the camera up the whole time I did it. And I was talking to them, and I was like, you put one diseased apple tree in the orchard, and it will kill and disease the other ones. You must get rid of it. You got to get rid of the disease, the toxicity, the bad thing. The element must go. And we have rhinos on the right. depending upon what side you are, everyone knows what I'm talking about. And then you have the extreme left and what's going on there. And, to see a future to me is you must have, I don't know, I guess maybe the right word would be abolish it all and start fresh. How do you do that? You go against your own constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But I think humanity must come first.
Right.
The order to protect the future and children and fight back against this climate, which Donald spoke a lot on, which I've been an advocate against for 20 years, watching and understanding the technology of how that works. Because again, that's another food attack source of what our United States can do to us. They can create devastational weather conditions, and they can do it. They know it. They got it down pat. They know how to work the nanoparticles that they're putting in, nanotubes that they send up there, the strontium, the barium, the reflectants, which now we're getting documentations that had also been identified now that we may have found a way that this thing has been isolated. No one could isolate it. Everyone would say in the fight, if you can prove its existence, this disease that we all were fighting against for the last, 24 months ish more, nobody could prove it. Well, the scientists now collecting data from this and collecting waters are saying that it's attached to it, which means it's an aerosol conductor that is a weapon in more ways than one against humanity. And if they really want to deliver something harmful, and you must ask yourself, like when it comes to things like that, how would they know what areas were going to be the worst? They were sending National Guard to this area, that area, this state, that city, projecting where, and boom, it would hit. Boom. Yeah. The biggest numbers ever. Now, part of that was probably the media vaccination telling you that this was all going on. Some people were walking through some hospitals saying, where's the patients? Where's the patients? And they're getting thrown out doing live phone streaming. But the point is, that's how crooked we are. And Trump finally brought that up in his last a couple of days ago, or 2 days ago, I think it was, on a morning show with a young lady doing an interview. And he was he kept repeating it. But the way he was putting it out there was the information that's not so grave. And I take everything that he says in reverse, because when he does that, it's a reverse analogy. It's a military strategy of actually explaining to people whatever I say, think the opposite. And that's exactly what they've been teaching us on everything that they do that we do wrong. And that's probably the same thing and the same process that they're using for us to believe that they have full power and control over in Ukraine right now, and Russia is really down on. And I don't think Russia's that weak.
Mm-hmm. No, and like I said, I think everyone has something to gain in Ukraine, and the people of Ukraine are basically just the pawns that are making the narrative happen. And it doesn't matter to Putin. I'm going to back off on that. I think it does matter to him what the outcome is. But even if he doesn't take over all of Ukraine, like if he takes over part of it or none of it, at the end of the day, if he comes in and signs an agreement that says we'll back off here as long as you agree to give us back what was ours, he still comes out billions of dollars ahead because of the sanctions that were put against other companies within his nation. So he personally benefits from it. Plus, if he succeeds, if he liberates the groups that were wanting liberated, if he takes over Ukraine and puts away all of the corrupt Ukrainian oligarchs and politicians that have been allowing the human trafficking, that have been allowing and participating in the illegal trade of various forms of anti-human goods, essentially, around the world, supporting terrorism, supporting whatever. Ukraine has been a conduit to Europe for a lot of different activities.
Yeah.
And so if he shuts that down, then he's a hero. if he doesn't shut it down, he's more of a billionaire. So it's a win-win for him. The politicians that are in Ukraine, if they come out ahead in this battle, then they're guaranteed re-election and basically probably their spots for life, because they're the ones that took on Putin and won. There is no loss to be had for the people in government. The only loss to be had is us peons, us people on the ground who are too distracted to notice our freedoms eroding here at home, and the people that are over there that are being literally shot and maimed and killed in the name of some turf war between politicians.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think we need to keep focused on what's going on in America while this is going on. Not that this doesn't have a level of importance, because we're in a global issue.
Right.
It's always been a global issue, and we're part of that. It's like everybody now is brothers and sisters of all countries. We give each other support in many ways. And a lot of people have been in touch with people in Ukraine, also in Russia. Nobody wants to see this. But
Right.
when it comes down to government versus government, you will see it. It happens. Problem with that is narratives get you to unfocus from where they may be able to slip some other things into the dark. They love the hours of the dark to manage their agendas, and we know that their agenda 21 didn't work out quite as well as they thought it would, but they're heading to the great agenda 2030. So they still think they have vibrancy, that they have some sense of strength to accomplish that narrative. And they probably have a lot of more tools left in the toolbox that they haven't spilt out on us yet. Every day we wake up to something new. You have any thoughts or comments on how? You're a pastor. People could listen to a word or two that you might be able to say to keep them strong and enlightened in times like this.
I don't know. I think that in times like this, we definitely just need to remember. Ultimately, our goal as humans should be to love our brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus in the Bible even said, "Love your enemy," which to me implies that at times we will have enemies. So, if Joe Biden showed up at my house confused, I would probably give him some water and call someone. But
I'd probably pull the chair out from underneath him. I'm sorry. I know that's wrong for me to say, and I shared with you my background. A lot of these people know it. I share some of the weddings and stuff that I do, with people. But so they know what I do. They know what I've done. I didn't lie about it, but I'm still angered to the effect of this reset that started day one. That and this plan and all the consequences that came from it, that we can't lose that focus of any of that. The Bible makes stipulations and gives guidance,
right.
but it's up to you to understand the interpretation, because the Bible would not tell you ever not to defend your own self.
Right. Yeah.
It would support you in that.
And
So
especially defending other people, that's throughout the scriptures.
right.
Like there are severe consequences for people that won't stand up for the oppressed. So there again, like I said, if Joe Biden showed up and he was lost and confused, I'd probably give him water. But if I saw him or one of his staff ordering someone to, beat up a homeless guy for no apparent reason, then I would side with the homeless guy. Even if it meant going to death, it's like we have to have compassion for the less fortunate.
Yes.
And here we see this in Ukraine. they're less fortunate than us because they're suffering physical violence. But at the same time, uh, we are still under attack in our liberties, in our humanity, from our own government, and that should never be the case. The ones that are called to serve us should never be forcing us into slavery. So,
Right. And it's a clear picture that that's the narrative. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, they're trying to steal our lands, cancel the culture, cancel leases, cancel pipelines, the things that make us whole, the things
right,
that make us strong and affordable. Because, at least in our country, we can speak in terms of, I know every country has its issues,
mhm,
and people need more freedoms because they've been taken away from them in all countries. Um, and we need them back, and we need to restore all countries, including the United States of America, and start picking up the stars that fell off and put them back on the flag and make them count again. And put these statues up of history that mattered. I'm sure there were some out there in that conflict scenario that maybe some were a little, on the borderline for what they represented. I don't know. I don't know everyone, but I do know that we've seen a lot of things, and we saw the ill supports and GoFundMe accounts that
mhm,
that they that they promoted for criminals.
right,
And here, still, we're living in a country now where trillions of dollars have been put into people's hand to make Build Back Better, where we could have cured homeless over and over and
right,
over and over
and
and
over.
over and over, and our vets, and take care of them better. The ones that come home sick, that seen things beyond what people would want to even talk about, and shell shock and more, and leave those guys to perish out into the streets as well, and yet welcome this open border system to bring in what seems to be other countries that now have a different purpose of importance, and that's the whole fact of how we put this together. What we know this element is of losing our freedom and liberties and more, as you said, without a doubt. Uh, it blows my mind every day that I do this sometimes. Um, I want to come on. I want to do a show that I enjoy. I
Yeah,
look for them, and you may not know this about me, but I do other levels of shows, somewhat entertainable, maybe because information's good, and if you really deliver information that people find interesting, you give them a break,
right.
and then you give them a little mind release. And I love doing that more than I loved coming on and talking about American Crisis, because it's not ever going to get out of one. That's why I called the show it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, to me, it's like, hopeless USA, and I don't want to represent that, and I don't want to come off negative to anybody. I don't. That's like me condemning the cross, and that's one of the other interesting things I want to bring up to you. One of
mhm,
the things that got reported back to me that civilians talked about was they passed two crosses with Russian soldiers on them burning. Did you hear anything about that?
I have not heard about that. No.
Keep
Um,
your ear open to that, and just, because I'd love to have you come back on as we narrate through this. We don't know where we'll go. Maybe we can keep in touch and keep strength up here through your intel of good people, citizens, up there that know who you are through the churches and what have you, and we'll be able to put something together more that is more concrete. The only thing I get out of tonight is everything that you said is on point. A lot of things that I say, I'm still trying to find points on, but I'm
mhm,
trying to make them, I'm trying to even make myself understand it, because a lot of people can't on voice. And
right.
even when you come into the church, like when you do your work in church, and there was a day that I had to do things and where I was and so forth. There's a sense of um, where people look for inspiration or a resource of voice and compassion. And to put it together in this scenario system, it's really difficult because of where we're at, and you have the good versus the bad, and then
Yeah.
levels that just rip it apart.
And it kind of seems like we're winding down here. So before we do, I definitely want to say it's important to have hope. You were talking about wanting to put stars back on that flag and what they represent. Um, and I feel like what we see here, it's bad. Around the world, it's bad. But if history has told us anything, you know, we had World War One. A couple decades later, we had World War Two. 100 years before that, we had the Civil War. But every time we come through a period of struggle, it, it leads to a period of revival. It leads to a period where people find their hope again, find their trust in humanity and their willingness to work towards a greater good. And I hope that as we see this, the scale of this is potentially even greater than it was during World War II. We're seeing more nations actively involved it, leading up to whatever is going to happen. And in at least the political discourse, as well as in the social discourse with their own populations. Um, and I feel like at some point something's going to break. The dam is going to break, and freedom will have to come out and flood again, just like it always has in the past. Every time people try to dam it up, it finds a way through. So that's my
Somewhere in those lines, then there's an answer and hope, and we'll find it, and we will rebuild.
absolutely. I believe that.
That's a good analogy for it. Thank you for that. And the things about picking up the stars, that's a reflection of all the bad states who
Mhm.
hurt the United States. It's not representation per se, but we know that even like in Pennsylvania, that star fell off. we
Yep.
we we know who these bad states are, and that's what I can't what I'm hoping that we can get fixed to build the strength in those states, and we can pick up the star. We're back.
Yeah.
We got one back. That's kind of like the battleground of it. I got my stars marked. Every one of them means like what state's good, what state's bad, who's red, who's blue, what's purple. That's the borderline. That's the halfers. The purples. So they play them cards. They want to be a party to both sides because in some ways, and someday,
At the end
um,
of at the end of the day, though, we talk about good states and bad states. Um, what we're really talking about is government.
yeah,
Which government actually cares for their people? Um, at the end of the day, the people in those states all want the same thing. They want to be able to go out, make a halfway decent living, come home, maybe have a family or someone to care for, and just generally exist as a on a human level.
right.
Um, and so it will come down to when can the people get enough strength to turn those states back to good, to turn their governments back to good. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's really the crux of it.
And you're right, and that really is it. And that's why I'm hoping that as bad as this effect is to the globe, and
Mhm.
everybody's watching it, I hope it's an awakening moment. One that this corruption doesn't expect, that stands up even stronger. Because we need we need not any longer tolerate it. We need to join together to fight it and try to correct it the best way we can. Hoping these truckers make a big difference, and I hope it's not all for nothing, as well as the power of the executive orders, even on that narrative, because General Flynn even said, and I had a thing up. I was like, we could get as much done by just leaving the trucks in the driveways and don't turn the key on, and we'll accomplish the same things by just not tying ourselves up or putting ourselves in dangers. I was hearing some states you couldn't even go through. I'm not some one. I apologize. I don't remember exactly at the end of this day. It's been long. I may have been Iowa. that you couldn't even drive your truck through. You had to go around the state to get back onto the route that the truckers were using. So um, this is why this is that symbol with star thing. But you're right; it comes from one world place, and now it's called the One World Order. Who is really in charge was a bunch of elites that think that they have a better narrative, a plan of communism for us built in. Anyway, I do want to thank you again, Joel. I appreciate it. I'm pronouncing it correct, right, Pastor Joel?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. It really has. Sorry about the start. How that did. I was going to open up, and then I thought, you know what? The conversation was so good. Let's just rock into it, and we're going to keep everybody informed best we can. What you think? Would you mind coming back? If we get some information, it might be, of real good fact. Would you come on for a few minutes here or there when you have a spare moment?
Absolutely. And
Cool.
kind of one of my pet projects is still Yemen. You don't hear a lot of reporting on that, and I think it's geopolitically just as important as Ukraine, even though it's
Okay.
not in the media as much. But there's a reason they're trying to keep that region unstable. So maybe in a future talk we can look into that a little bit too. But
I think I know where you're going with that. And I think a lot of the people have an awareness to it already. If you saw the messages coming through me and some of the conversations in the private chat messenger groups, because I have a lot of groups that I've given away to a lot of people too. It started with people. Some they just, wanted the point of the power and they got rid of me as admin, which is fine. The purpose was it's always been for the voice for the people. But I have suffered even some of those events, But you know what? I create rooms. I even have Christians for America. I mean, if you want to go in, you want to post prayers and support. These are little formats because if you're in Facebook jail, you can still do things in Messenger and they don't bother you. There may come a time where they will, but they are not now. So there's I don't know, we got a bunch of them out there, and then there's a bunch of groups on Facebook, and I've just been trying to collaborate and get more people together and build a more patriotic system of strength for people. And it's really not for me. And I want nothing from it. I ask for nothing. I'm a free platform. However, do you want to tell everybody about your church in case you reach anybody out there that could help you and help you possibly grow in the way that would be beneficial to you? Do you have a website that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a Facebook page, the Church of God Sydney, and then we've also got the churchofgodsydney.org. It's all one word.
Okay.
So pretty basic. But yeah, as far as what we're trying to do, it's one thing that I really have a heart for is reaching out to people, like I said, in war zones in particular. Because a lot of times it's the people in those regions that get overlooked. And so I have direct links to actual pastors and not even pastors, sometimes just regular people that are kind of leading groups through the hard times in their regions, and Egypt, Yemen, Ukraine, that I feel like need support. And so I'm working on that. Some of my church members help with that. And if anyone wants to get a hold of me with regards to those types of things, then they can absolutely do so, if either through the website I just mentioned, or if they wanted to contact you and get my contact, that's fine.
I already wrote it down for you. I did. And I'll promote it out there as often as I can through the groups to let everybody know, because honestly, a big majority of everybody that comes into the platform, are on our level. They will understand. And a lot have outreach programs. Deborah was just in, a young lady, Deborah Ann Myers. She's always involved at her church, meals and different things. And, that's the function. And we know how badly the churches were attacked on all levels. Right. I don't care if it was an outside church versus an inside. I mean, So when they start squashing your right to prayer and religion and protection, they've gone too far. They really have. So it's the Church of God Sydney.org.
Yes, and that's Sydney spelled SIDNEY.
Oh, SID.
Yeah. So
Cool. No, I want to have it right for you because I'll do the best I can to mention you out. And no, keep in touch, please. Do that. And if anything comes up and you feel we could get together and just have even a half-hour conversation, that would be fine. Some of my shows go a little longer, but it's completely up to you as the guest too. No, I mean honestly, it's fine that way. I don't mind it at all. Get me back and get some sleep.
Hey, I like everything: history, religion, politics. Whatever they tell you not to talk about, I like to talk about. So,
Oh my God, that's me. I have a group called America Disclosing Uncensored on Facebook. It's everything unknown. It's everything historical. It's everything today. It's current. It's military industrial complex. It's stories. It's whistleblowers. To me, I don't know. I just have a fascination with that, as well as some treasury things like treasures and all the objectives of this global elite of control. Because used to be a treasure out, if you find it now, you got to turn it over, even to the guy that stole it from somebody. It's still his because it went down on his ship, even though he stole it from another culture. It's mine. It's no finders, keepers, weepers, losers. No, it doesn't work that way. It's the global hand must touch all. The all, more than the all-seeing eye. I must touch all. Part of it all must be mine. The taxation of slavery. You pay to live, you pay to die. The only thing they haven't figured out a tax on yet, and in Pittsburgh, we got a new one just this past year. It's called a rain tax. We will be taxed on our property by its size, by how much rain falls accordingly. Imagine that. And they control some of those narratives, which is, mind-blowing in itself. It might become very expensive, as often as it rains in Pittsburgh now. But no, when you look at all these things, so I love that group. Maybe you want to look into it, check into it, and come on and talk on another segment that we do that way. And, keep us spiritual, because we even do the enlightenment and all that stuff like that. There's a couple of girls that come on. So just keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. But I thank you so much. I appreciate you, man. You're a rock star.
Yeah, I thank you for having me on, and I look forward to future conversations.
Fantastic. So. And thanks to everybody out there. We're going to be signing off now. Remember, you got two pastors here. Don't forget it. And give all the support you can to the Church of God Sydney.org. Look them up, please, please. We must support Jen W. She's a big supporter, too. And Beth, you'll get to know them if you're around. I promise it.
I'll look forward to it.
All right. Appreciate you being on. Thanks so much. Have a pleasant night. Blessings to you, brother.
Thanks, sir.